So, this is a Buck 110 2021 limited edition. Um, I quite like this knife. It is part of a hobby that I've had for a little bit, and it's been growing. This knife in particular caused me problems. I took this knife apart, and I had one heck of a time getting it put back together. So, what I'd like to do now is share kind of what I figured out. So this is a fairly standard construction. Your standard T6, T8s. T6 for 90+% of it, T8 for the pivot. I am going to completely tear this thing down. It's easier for me to kind of think about it and show it in that way. So I'm going to take off the pocket clip. I'm going to take out the screws for the pocket clip scale, or the pocket side scale. These technically have a name, like a show side and a not show side or something like that. I don't know it. But yeah, there's that scale off. Flip it over. I'm going to pop the other scale off. So the pocket clip itself has these little guys on this side. The pocket clip is not reversible on this one. As far as I know, when I did try it, it didn't end well. Could be me. Could be just that they're not reversible. But yeah, so those, obviously, because they're around here, are somehow stopped from pivoting, and that is actually done by this little backspacer in here that I'll show you in just a moment. This little guy has keyed holes in it that these fit into. But that's not why we're here, although those do cause problems later on. So scales are off. Now we go on to the pivot. So pop the pivot off with a standard T8. Nothing too special there. Remember, this is under spring tension, so don't get too lax with it. Hold on to her because she's got some tension on her. So I'm going to push that little pivot out, which is going to release kind of everything. So pivot's out, knife comes apart. There's that backspacer I was talking about. So this is kind of its construction. And while this seems pretty simple, nothing too insane, no too many springs or anything, the back lock on this is a pain in the butt for me to get in properly. But I figured out a way, so I'm going to show you. So for me, I start with the keyed side, because that also lets me put the knife on. I'm going to pop the pivot in, and I'm also going to put the scale back on. For me, the reason I do this is just because this is the side that I want to capture stuff on. That's all I can really say about it, is for it just, in my head, it makes more sense for this to be the side that I'm kind of dropping things onto, and that'll make more sense in just a minute when we start the reassembly with those keyed things. This little backspacer with these keys on it. So get these in, la-di-da-di-da. And just so we're on the same page, this is the side the pocket clip is on. So that is as much for everyone watching as it is for me. This is the side the pocket clip goes on. So got those in. For me personally, grab that, lay it down. Oil, because oil, metal on metal is not bueno. Oil, because oil, and there's nothing here that is going to help the movement. It's metal on metal contact. So this is where it gets to be a giant pain in the butt. So this is the side where we're going to take this. Well, now these are, like I said, these are little keyed things. Pop those in, and we're going to make sure this is angled up, because we want this angled up so that the spring can sit there. So we're going to pop these in. You gotta put them in, you gotta rotate them, wiggle stuff around until it fits. And now I'm going to grab this, I'm going to pinch it, those will hold themselves, and I'm going to drop it right onto the scale I was working on. So the front pivot is long enough that it'll match up, which can help line those up. So now this is kind of sandwiched together, and I know the spring and the back spacer are not in, and it's important that these two are separate. So I'm going to pop the pivot in, so I have at least 1 point of securement. Securement's a word. I actually don't know if it is. I'm just screwing around. Pop that in, not too tight because we'll mess with the action later. I'm going to close this so I don't stab myself. I'm going to hold those two, flip it over. These little barrels have a side that is slightly wider and slightly narrower. The wider side goes down so they don't have any wiggle. So put that in, put this in, capture it with the clip. Make sure the clip is the right way. So on the clip, this end needs to flare out. You know, obviously it's going to make it a lot easier to catch in your pockets and stuff if you do that. So that's that. Get your little screws in to kind of hold everything together. So this is the majority of the reassembly. But if you left it alone like this, obviously it wouldn't work because there's nothing stopping the action and everything like that. And there's no scale. This is where things become a giant pain in the butt. So if you look down in there, there's a little slot for your spring. This is a spring, essentially, in this. So you drop that right in, and that'll sit like that. And now, what we can do, I've had better luck with it kind of open, but I'm going to try it closed so I don't poke myself. That's good there. So we want to let this bar down right here, and we want to squeeze it into place like that with the stud sitting here. This hole is chamfered. So we're going to set it right there, and we're going to squeeze this, and hopefully it's going to fall into place. Okay, yeah, it's starting to fall into place. So we're going to try to just make sure it seats well, because it needs to go all the way through to the other scale. And if it doesn't, then, well, you got a bigger problem. So I'm gonna, it's fiddly, it takes effort. So you mess with it. Yeah, see? And I don't know if you can see on the video okay, but it is now completely flush. Now, put our scale on. Oh, come on, don't wedge. Don't wedge, come on. Thank you. Put the scale on. This is my T6. It is. And then, so this is kind of the last step aside from fine-tuning the action. It is a buck 110. It has a rough action. It is not intended for rapid deployment, but honestly, this is a fantastic little knife. Well, not little, it's fairly large, for me at least. In my state, there are legal requirements about carrying things in parks and stuff like that, and I believe this is outside that legal limit. Not the end of the world, but something to be aware of. It is not the smallest knife in the world. It's like 3.5 inches. Which, like I said, depending on where you're at, stuff like that, so yeah, opens, closes, opens, closes. So yeah, that's the thing. After you reassemble everything, just mess with this back lock and let that bar fall through so that you're not trying to play with an open blade, because this thing comes from the factory sharp. It will cut you wide open. So I hope that helps somebody, because that took me like 45 minutes to figure out. I hope you guys like it. If you want to see me take apart more of my knives or want to know more about my collection, yeah, let me know, because it's something that I love and something I'd love to share. So, thanks. Later.